There are a lot of ways to figure out that your neighbor has a problem with you. Sometimes it's obvious. They complain about your dog. They call the county because your grass is too tall. They leave passive-aggressive notes in your mailbox. But in my case, I found out because a woman I'd barely spoken to demanded access to my internet like it was a public utility. And believe me, that's not even the weirdest part. My name is Ethan Mercer, and a few years ago, I moved out to a small property near Cedar Hollow Lake, a quiet community tucked into the hills outside western Colorado. It wasn't a fancy place, just a modest house, a detached workshop, a few acres of land, and enough distance from other people that I could actually hear myself think. That was the whole reason I moved there. After 15 years working in IT, sitting through endless meetings and solving other people's problems all day, I wanted peace. I wanted mornings with coffee on the porch and evenings watching the sun disappear behind the trees. No drama, no politics, no unnecessary conflict. At least that was the plan. Over time, I turned the property into what my daughter Emma jokingly called Dad's fortress of nerdiness. I installed security cameras at the gates, automated the irrigation system, added solar panels to the workshop, and built a powerful wireless network that covered most of my land. Not because I was paranoid. Quite the opposite. I liked technology because it made life simpler. If a gate opened, I got an alert. If a water line leaked, I knew immediately. It meant fewer headaches and more free time. Most people thought it was interesting. One person didn't. Her name was Vanessa Holt. Vanessa was president of the Pine Creek Community Association, the local HOA. She lived 3 houses away in one of those immaculate homes that looked like it had been assembled from a catalog. Every flower perfectly trimmed. Every decorative stone perfectly placed. Every holiday decoration installed with military precision. The first few months, she mostly watched. I'd notice her slowing down whenever she drove past my property. Sometimes she'd stop near the entrance and stare at the antennas mounted on my workshop roof. Other times, she'd linger at community events, asking strangely specific questions. That's quite a bit of equipment you have out there. Must cost a fortune. You monitor all of that yourself. The questions weren't rude exactly, but there was something underneath them, like she wasn't curious. She was inventorying. At first, I ignored it. Life was busy. Emma was preparing for college applications. Work kept me occupied. And honestly, I didn't have the energy to care what some HOA president thought about my gadgets. Then, one Saturday afternoon, everything changed. I was repairing a fence near the back pasture when Emma came jogging across the yard, trying not to laugh. Dad, I looked up. What? Your favorite person is here. I sighed immediately. Vanessa. Emma nodded. She's standing on the porch like she owns the place. That should have been my warning, because when I walked back toward the house, Vanessa wasn't waiting to talk. She was waiting to make a demand. A demand so ridiculous that for a moment, I genuinely thought she was joking. She smiled, adjusted the clipboard tucked under her arm, and said, Ethan, I need access to your Wi-Fi network. I actually laughed. Then I realized she wasn't laughing with me. And suddenly the afternoon got a whole lot more interesting. I stood there for a second waiting for the punchline. It never came. Vanessa's smile stayed perfectly in place. The kind of smile customer service representatives use right before telling you something is definitely your problem. I need access to your Wi-Fi network, she repeated. Emma had followed me onto the porch by then. I could practically feel her try not to burst out laughing behind me. I blinked. What? Vanessa looked genuinely surprised that I would ask. Because your signal reaches several areas around the lake where residents struggle with connectivity. Okay. It would benefit the community. There it was. The magic phrase. The community. I quickly learned that people who crave authority love those 2 words. They can justify almost anything if they wrap it in community language. My internet bill suddenly wasn't my internet bill anymore. It was apparently a community resource. I folded my arms. Vanessa, I pay for that service. Yes, but some residents don't have reliable coverage. Emma finally spoke. Then they should buy internet. I shot her a warning look. She immediately looked away, trying and failing to suppress a grin. Vanessa's smile tightened. I don't think you're understanding the situation. No, I said. I understand it perfectly. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then she leaned slightly forward. I've received multiple concerns. That phrase again. Concerns. Residents. Community. Benefits. The entire conversation felt like somebody had fed HOA terminology into a blender. I shook my head. My answer is no. The smile vanished. Not dramatically. Not instantly. Just enough that I saw the real expression underneath. Control slipping. And people who are used to control rarely handle that well. She adjusted her clipboard. I would hate for this to become a compliance issue. There it was. The threat. Wrapped in a business casual package. My stomach tightened. Not because I was intimidated. Because now I understood exactly what this was. This wasn't about internet. This was about somebody hearing the word no and deciding it wasn't acceptable. Have a nice day, Vanessa. The conversation ended. At least I thought it did. 3 days later, she showed up again. Then again. Then again. Sometimes she would catch me near the mailbox. Sometimes at the lake. Sometimes while I was unloading supplies from my truck. Every conversation somehow circled back to the same thing. The network. The signal. The community. One evening, she actually stopped me while I was walking my dog. Ethan, people are beginning to feel excluded. I laughed before I could stop myself. Excluded from what? The coverage. I honestly didn't know how to respond to that. The dog looked confused too. Things became stranger after that. I started noticing her standing near the edge of my property. Not crossing onto it. Just lingering. Watching. Sometimes holding her phone. Sometimes carrying a tablet. Always looking toward the workshop where my networking equipment was mounted. At first I convinced myself I was imagining it. Then Emma noticed. Dad, what? She's doing it again. We were eating dinner when Emma pointed through the kitchen window. Sure enough, Vanessa was standing near the road, looking directly at our property. Maybe she's bird watching. Emma snorted. At 8 o'clock at night? Fair point. The following week, the first HOA letter arrived. Then another. Then another. One claimed my antennas were visually disruptive. Another questioned whether my equipment complied with community standards. Another suggested neighbors had concerns regarding electronic interference. I checked every rule, every regulation, every covenant. Nothing. Absolutely nothing prohibited what I had installed. And I think that frustrated Vanessa more than anything, because she kept looking for a rule that would force me to cooperate. But there wasn't one. One night, Emma walked into my office, carrying her laptop. She had that expression. The expression every parent eventually learns to recognize. The one that means their child has already made a decision. Dad. I looked up. No, I haven't even asked yet. Doesn't matter. No. She rolled her eyes. Just hear me out. I leaned back in my chair. Fine. Emma sat down across from me. You realize she's trying to get into the network, right? I frowned. What? She's been trying. How do you know? Emma turned her laptop around. The screen was filled with connection logs. Attempt after attempt. Device requests. Authentication failures. Unknown access requests. Different times. Different locations. Same pattern. My stomach dropped. Those are hers. I'm 99% sure. Ow! Emma pointed to timestamps. Every attempt happens when she's outside. The room suddenly felt quieter. I looked at the screen again. There weren't just a few attempts. There were dozens. Some during the day. Some after midnight. Some from locations around the lake. She wasn't asking for access anymore. She was trying to take it. Emma watched my face. Now do you understand why I wanted to show you? I slowly nodded. Something inside me shifted right then. Because until that moment, I thought I was dealing with an annoying neighbor. An overbearing HOA president. A control freak. But this was different. This was deliberate. Persistent. Calculated. Vanessa wasn't trying to solve a community problem. She was trying to prove she could get her way. No matter what I said. Emma closed the laptop. Then she smiled. A very dangerous smile. The kind that appears right before intelligent people do something creative. So, I already knew where this was going. No, Dad, no. It'll be legal. I sighed. That's exactly what worries me. Emma laughed. Then she opened the laptop again. Trust me. I looked at the glowing screen. The endless failed connection attempts. The timestamps. The pattern. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I realized something. Vanessa thought she was applying pressure. What she didn't know was that every single move she made was creating a trail that was getting longer every day. And my daughter had just decided to start collecting it. The funny thing is, neither of us knew then that those records would eventually destroy the very thing Vanessa cared about most. Her reputation, her authority. and her position at the top of the HOA. But that's exactly where this story was headed. Over the next few days, Emma transformed from my daughter into what I can only describe as a highly motivated cybersecurity gremlin. She didn't hack anyone. She didn't break any laws. She didn't do anything remotely unethical. What she did do was build boundaries. Very effective boundaries. She upgraded our firewall, tightened access controls, added device monitoring, and created a custom notification system that would trigger whenever unauthorized connection attempts were detected. Then she added one final touch. A bright red screen. Simple. Impossible to misunderstand. Access denied, unauthorized access, attempt detected property, owner notified when she showed it to me. She looked ridiculously proud. What do you think? I stared at the screen. It feels a little dramatic. Exactly. The next morning, I was drinking coffee on the porch when I heard an irritated sound coming from near the road. Then another. Then another. I looked up, and there was Vanessa, holding a tablet, tapping the screen aggressively. Top! 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 Then she pulled out her phone. Same result. The red warning screen appeared again. Her face went through an entire emotional journey in about 10 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, embarrassment, anger. Then she started marching toward my property. I set my coffee down because I had a feeling this was about to become memorable. She stopped at the edge of the driveway and held up the tablet. What is this? I looked at the screen. Oh, I nodded. Looks like it's working. Her eyes widened. You blocked me. Emma appeared behind me in the doorway. That's generally how security works. Vanessa turned toward her. You did this. Emma shrugged. You kept trying to access something that wasn't yours. The silence that followed was almost funny. Vanessa looked like someone had just informed her gravity was optional. Then came the accusation. This is harassment. I actually laughed. Not because I was trying to be rude, because the irony was overwhelming. Harassment? Yes. You've been attempting to access my private network for weeks. You can't prove that. Emma smiled. That same dangerous smile. Oh, actually, she held up her laptop. And suddenly Vanessa stopped talking. The logs weren't complicated. They didn't need to be. Date, time, location estimate, device identifier, attempt, failure, attempt, failure, attempt, failure. Pages of it, weeks of it. The color drained from Vanessa's face. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked uncertain. Not angry, not offended, uncertain. The crowd didn't help, because by then, several neighbors had slowed down to watch. People notice drama in small communities. It's practically a survival instinct. Someone whispered. Someone else pulled out a phone. And Vanessa realized something important. She wasn't controlling the story anymore. She tried one last move. The move people often make when facts stop cooperating. I'm reporting this to the HOA board. Please do, I said. That answer seemed to surprise her. Maybe she expected panic. Maybe she expected negotiation. Instead, she got relief. Because honestly, I was tired. I wanted everything out in the open. A week later, we got exactly that. The monthly HOA meeting. The room was packed. Vanessa arrived carrying folders, printed reports, highlighted documents, and what appeared to be a PowerPoint presentation. I wish I were joking. For nearly 20 minutes, she spoke about digital hostility, community concerns, exclusionary technology, and threats to neighborhood harmony. The board members listened politely. Most looked confused. Then one elderly treasurer raised her hand. Vanessa, yes. Are you upset because you can't use Ethan's Wi-Fi? The room went silent. Completely silent. The kind of silence where you suddenly become aware of every cough and every squeaking chair. Vanessa froze. And in that moment, everybody finally understood what this entire conflict had been about. Not safety, not community, not fairness. Control. I stood up, opened my phone, and handed the board copies of Emma's logs. Nobody needed a lengthy explanation. The records spoke for themselves. Repeated access attempts. Repeated denials. Repeated efforts after clear refusal. The board members looked through the evidence. Then they looked at Vanessa. Then back at the evidence. The outcome wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting. No courtroom speech. No public meltdown. Honestly, that made it even more satisfying. Because reality doesn't usually end with explosions. It ends with consequences. Vanessa received a formal warning from the association. She was required to attend mediation training. And a few months later, during the next election cycle, she quietly lost her leadership position. After that, everything changed. The visits stopped. The letters stopped. The complaints stopped. Sometimes I'd see her driving through the neighborhood. She'd keep her eyes forward and continue past my property like it wasn't even there. And honestly, that was all I ever wanted. Peace. The funny thing is, looking back now, I don't think Vanessa was a villain. I think she was someone who got used to people moving when she pushed. Someone who confused authority with entitlement. And when she finally met a boundary, she couldn't talk her way around. She didn't know what to do. Emma taught me something during all of this. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to yell louder. You don't have to humiliate people. Sometimes the strongest response is simply creating a line and calmly refusing to move it. The system didn't defeat Vanessa. Her own choices did. But here's the question I've wondered ever since. If someone genuinely believes they're acting for the good of everyone, does that excuse how far they're willing to go? Or does good intention stop mattering the moment you start ignoring someone else's rights? I'm curious what you think. Have you ever dealt with a neighbor, manager, family member, or HOA leader who thought your boundaries were optional? Were they protecting a community or protecting their own need for control? Let me know in the comments. Because honestly, I still don't know whether Vanessa saw herself as the hero of this story, or if she ever realized she was the reason it happened in the first place.